another episode of Anna Rose Reads the Podcast. I am your host, Anna, and today's episode is coming to you a little early compared to normal during the week. I'm releasing this on Monday, on April 21st. It is the day before April 22nd, which is the release of Nat Cassidy's When the Wolf Comes Home, and my guest for the week, Nat Cassidy. This book is incredible. I mean, words are hard to find to define when the wolf comes home. It conquers so much about fear, anxiety, responsibility. There's really no words. It's a really powerful book. And I was fortunate enough to talk to Nat back in January about his process behind writing this book and all of the associated things with it. I mean, it is a very long conversation that I have with Nat. I think over an hour and 10 minutes long. We also do get a little sidetracked and talked about the stand. Per usual. That's kind of just what happens with us, I guess. But it is a really, really wonderful conversation that I treasure, and I'm just very fortunate to have had the opportunity to have that kind of conversation with Nat about this book. And the reason that I am releasing it all to you so early compared to my normal Tuesday release is that this is a big release. A lot of people are really, really excited about this book, including Stephen King. Stephen King has so graciously blurbed this book on social media, which has just made me so thrilled for Nat and everybody else, honestly. And there are a lot of people chatting with Nat this week. So, in an effort to kind of make sure that everybody gets the attention that they deserve, I wanted to give this episode a little bit more airtime just to get in front of you guys and time for people to listen. In addition to being able to listen to everybody else's amazing podcast, I believe Neil from Talking Scared will be chatting with Nat. I believe that Stephanie on Books in the Freezer is talking to Nat. I think anywhere that you get a horror podcast, there's probably going to be a conversation with Nat. And please check out every single one of them. Nat is one of the most knowledgeable, intellectual, yet accessible voices in horror. He never once shames you for what you don't know about something, and he's happy to tell you about something new, never in a way that feels like mansplaining or it is, condescending. He's truly one of the best people that I know. And I just respect him so much, and that's really why I'm so thrilled for this book's release. I know how much it means to him. The afterword always, as always with his books, got me. And this is a special one. There's just no way around it. It's just a very special book. So, without further ado, I hope that you guys enjoy. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hello, Nat. How are you?
Hello, I'm so glad to be here with you. That's how I am. I'm excited to be, and in fact, I'm remembering I need to keep my voice a little lower because my wife is also on a call.
Oh,
So I'm going to modulate my excitement, but it is nothing personal.
I
Uh,
appreciate that all the
Quite the
same.
opposite. I'm very
No matter
excited to be here.
no matter the volume of it, I appreciate that. I'm gonna be a little bit more. I'm gonna try to do it a little bit more of a formal introduction because I finally figured out that it's not that hard to put yourself on a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts last week. So this is gonna be audio as well now. In
Oh
addition,
boy. It's
I
good
know.
people want to see how disgusting my office is at the moment. That's just a
So in
visual
case
treat.
no, listen, I love your shelves. I like literally every time you post anything with your shelves, I'm constantly like to be a total creep, I'm constantly zooming in to see what's on there.
Yeah, I should do like a walkthrough one of these days. The shelves are great. It's all the crap that is you can
I was
is
about to
like
say
building up from the floor, encroaching upon the shelves.
you do have a lot of trinkets, and like this shelf behind me doesn't have it, but my two by my TV like have so much crap on them.
Yeah. And
So
they
I
get
feel
so
that.
dusty. Like
Yeah.
it seems like such a fun thing to have little trinkets, and then you're like, I gotta move everything
Oh,
to
I
dust
know.
it. It's the worst.
I know the feeling. Okay. But in case people don't know who you are Nat Cassidy. You are the author of books such as Mary, Nestlings, Rest Stop that just came out with Shortwave this last summer. And what I'm hoping to talk to you about mostly today is When the Wolf Comes Home that comes out on April 22nd with Tor Nightfire.
That's true.
Um, Yep. So you know, I love this book. I mean, I already reviewed it and I've talked to you about it a little bit. But do you want to introduce the book because I imagine you're a pro at this now at
Actually,
summarizing
no,
this.
you are the first person I'm speaking to
No
who has read
shit.
this book. Like this is stop one on whatever promo blitz
Oh
will
shit.
develop
Okay.
as the year rolls on. So yeah, I have
No pressure.
nothing prepared at all. I have not had to wrap my mind around this book in the slightest. In fact, I did speak about it a tiny bit when I did Tananarive Dew's podcast
Yeah.
months ago, but it was, the podcast was about other things. I just started talking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And she asked me what the book is about, and I just started like rambling, vomiting a like beat by beat synopsis of what happens, and eventually she was like, "All right, like I'm gonna stop you there because people need to read the book." Uh, uh, all of which is to say, I don't have my like capsule um, synopsis yet, but basically, it's a story about. I'm gonna see if I can do it. It's about a struggling late 20 something actress named Jess who's living out in LA, and her career is just kind of going nowhere. She's working a terrible job at a really rundown 24-hour diner under a highway. And she's just kind of questioning her life and her life choices, and her estranged father has also just died, someone she hasn't seen in 20 years, and has no real love lost between him. But it's messing her up that he's dead. And she's just kind of thinking about life and what she's going to do. And she gets home after a particularly awful shift at this diner, and she discovers a runaway 5-year-old boy hiding in her bushes of her apartment complex. And she takes the boy inside and she tries to figure out what's wrong and what she can do. And before she can really get his story, the kid's dad shows up, demanding that she give him back. And before they know it, horrible violence erupts, and she and the boy find themselves on the run from the father, who is pursuing them and leaving absolute carnage in his wake. And they have to find a way to, reach safety, and also come to terms with increasingly more undeniably garish and mysterious horrors that are afflicting them, because the boy and or his dad might not be what they seem.
That was great. I think you
Yeah, does
did a
that
really
work?
good job. That works really well. And I was waiting for you to pull like what you did whenever you did the deep dive on Buick 8 and you're just like it's about a weird car. Just leave it at that.
Maybe
It's
that's
about a
simpler.
kid. It's about a kid
About
on
a
the
kid.
run.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
it's about an actress.
yeah, no. That was great. That was great. I think, in broad strokes when you've talked about the book before, you've said like you've kind of compared it to Terminator 2, I believe.
Yeah.
You've said that it's more of like your action-packed novel, you're more, I don't know, and I had that in mind going in, and in the best way possible. It was so much more than that, and I'm gonna do my very best to not talk about too many details because there are certain things in this book that I wouldn't call them spoilers.
Hmm.
Like they're not gonna affect how you interpret the ending of the book, but like damn was I so happy to read them and find them there because they weren't advertised. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you wrote some things in there and I was like, "Damn it, Nat." I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you put them in there." It's a hell of a book. I mean, like I said, I
Thank you.
absolutely loved it. And you open it up with quite the bang. The name of the first part is All Dads Are Motherfuckers. And I mean,
It's just science.
it okay, but this is what I kind of want to pick your brain about a little bit. Is like, and I don't think that there is an answer to this. I mean, I think Freud would be a whole lot more famous if there was an answer to this, but like,
Hmm.
why is fatherhood the way that it is? And I think you can't you that's what the book is about in a way. It's about that father-shaped hole in your life sometimes or
Hmm.
where you come from and the things that you wrestle with and the things that you fear for. And like one of the biggest fears that we think of is parenthood and taking care of a child outside of your body, right?
Yeah.
But with parenthood in particular, man, like what is it? Like what is it about fatherhood? You know?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's a deep and complicated question.
Yeah, I'm starting off
And
with the easy ones.
yeah, right. We'll just get this out of the way. and we
Yeah.
can talk about oh, I almost spoiled something. I'm not going to. Um, so hold that thought, reader. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess to zoom out just a tiny bit as I attempt to answer this question, which is a great question, and one I've thought about a lot, particularly in relationship with my own dad, which I go into in the afterword of this book,
Yeah.
which was its own complicated thing, complicated and beautiful and positive, but
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
But to zoom out a tiny bit in an attempt to, flank this question, I think parenthood is, in general, just so complicated, and it's
Yeah.
something that we're uncomfortable with how complicated it is. I touched a little bit on this in Nestlings, um, but there are plenty. The cliche is, or I don't even know if cliche is the right word, but like the easy thought, the more socially acceptable thought is that fatherhood is weird and
Yeah.
difficult because there's not like a biological gestational relationship with
Right.
the child. It's kind of almost like uh, a handshake sort of relationship with this new organism that you did not have to carry. Um, but I don't think we as society even like to think about how motherhood is equally as complicated,
Yeah.
and that there are um, you know there's not just an emotional neatness there just because a person gestated the baby. Like a child is um, such an onus at times. It can be such a burden at
Yeah.
times that like if you remove the emotions from it, if you remove the love drive and the nurture drive and the protection drive and stuff like that, like it's years of just abject need, constant need, no social awareness whatsoever. It's a parasitic sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and the main reason why I contextualize it with including motherhood is I think as complicated as motherhood can be, uh, it's even more complicated when you factor in the idea that there isn't that gestational relationship. Like, even though that gestational relationship is not like a panacea of any kind, it doesn't mean
Right.
you're necessarily going to have a good relationship with a mother, or the mother's going to feel a prescribed way about a child. But when you add into that, um, the just the sheer fact that like it's happening not just outside of you, but almost like doubly outside of you, this relationship between mother and child when you are the father, that like archetypally it is just that much more ill-defined
Yeah.
a relationship. You can't physically feed it. Like you have biologically, just for ease of conversation's sake, assuming the father is a cis male, like you don't have any additional biological equipment other
Right.
than the one for insemination. Like everything
Right.
else is just kind of like up to you to
Yeah.
try and figure out. And so it's just on a like or, what is the word that starts with an O? Organism, organic. That's the word. It's been a long day. On just like an organic level, I think it is,
Yeah.
because it is so, you know, structurally ill-defined after a certain point. It is just kind of complicated, and it's up to whoever the person is, the individual is, and also how they're socialized. And our
Yeah.
society is so weird about men
Yes.
and
Yes.
fatherhood and masculinity and stuff like that just compounds the weirdness. And so like I think fathers in our culture uh can become, this is kind of what the book is gesturing towards, they can become this like big bad wolf sort of figure. Just you wait till your father gets home. Like they become like the
Right.
disciplinarian. They become the less emotionally available figure. They become the person that uses fear and punishment to kind of guide the child. And I should specify before I go further up my own butthole that like I'm not a child psycho. I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
no,
I'm speaking
no.
of all of these things just like from a
Yeah.
lay person's perspective and my own just what I have kind of internalized. Um, but yeah, so like the father figure then just becomes this embodiment of, for lack of a better phrase, the simmering toxic masculinity that is
Yeah.
a fundamental current of the society we're in. And um, I know that was I had a very atypical dad, very 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 atypical, and one who was not in my life for a big majority of it. But even then,
Yeah.
I was raised primarily by, I was raised totally by a single mom, except for the kind of intermittent custody that my dad had. Um, so my mom's influence was primary, and she would tell me how when I was like a little kid, when they were like still married,
Hmm.
which was until I was like 3 or 4 or something like that, that there was a period in my life where I was so scared of my dad that I would just scream anytime he walked into the room. And our relationship again, it changed. It
Yeah.
never stayed that way. When I became like a conscious sort of sentient creature, I was never really scared of him, but like I just found that to be very interesting that like that
Yeah.
was my kind of first interaction with it. That was my first impulse, was to be afraid of this figure. Um, and I'll stop rambling and give you a chance to talk because I've been talking for 3 hours now. But yeah, just to like wrap up that question, I think there is no real easy answer
Yeah.
for why is fatherhood so complicated. Um, but there are a lot of like anecdotal, um, kind of generalized answers that I think gesture towards why I think for a lot of people, I know for me, I hesitate to speak for you, but I think for you as well, I think for a lot of people out there, that relationship with the father in particular is it's just fucking weird. It's
Yeah.
just weird.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to say, like I'm somebody who doesn't have kids and I'm
Yeah,
just I'm
same.
just speaking from being a kid. Like my perspective on this is being a child, okay?
Mm,
At the ripe age of 26. So I guess, and your answer, it's hard. The question that I asked is very big because there's so many factors. I mean, that's like we're going back to nature versus nurture at this point,
yeah.
and then every social influence and, like you said, the toxic masculinity and all of these different things and like what we define manliness is or being a good father is depending on faith and location and region, like all of those different things affect all of that for sure. So there is no easy answer to that. But, and I think that I don't know if you wrote about it in your afterword or in your acknowledgments, but I believe that I talked to you at one point and you said that you had kind of looked at Daniel Krause's Whale Fall
Mm,
as like an not I don't say an influence, but it's like, something that your book touches on, like some
yeah.
similar themes. And I very much agree with that. And I don't know that I know a person, man, woman, or whoever, like I don't know that I know anybody who doesn't have like an issue with their dad at one point in their life. Like and that's not to say like they don't have mom issues either. Like everybody has
Right.
problems with their parents for
Yeah.
whatever reason and whatever form that they come. But for whatever reason, it's like the term daddy issue is like a thing and it just
Yeah.
sticks. And I like, listen, I'm the one who like I'd run with it sometimes whenever I'd like try and simplify things. I talk about whale fall like it's the daddy issue whale book. But, it's just our nomenclature for that kind of thing. And I just think it's really interesting because I think it really is complicated. It's
Yeah.
so hard because, my dad and my mom are still together and I'm very fortunate for that. And me and my dad had like a really rough patch of growing up from whenever I was like like I'd say like middle school and probably even before till I think I like about when I left for college. It's just like we weren't
Mm,
speaking the same language,
yeah.
and like we couldn't connect. And I don't think either one of us was present with one another, and there's like plenty of other things that go on in a relationship outside of that internal and external factors. But like you said, like it's just, I think everybody goes through this and it's such a weird thing that you can't answer it. It's hard to define and it takes so many different shapes and sizes because, I would say that my dad was never the enforcer or like he was never like aggressive ever,
Yeah.
but he would even if he was more reserved sometimes I felt like, well, why aren't you saying something, you know what I mean? So
Right.
like it's different things. It's like a push and a pull. And I think that what you do really well with when to bring it back to your book, and so we're not just having a therapy session about our dads.
Hey, that's fine.
Um, you kind of I feel like the book explores every angle of that through at
Hmm.
some point in the book. I don't think that it's ever oh, Dad's just the big bad scary. But by the book's end, it's a lot of different things that you're looking at. And, parenthood as a whole, the big theme is the dad aspect of it, but parenthood as a whole and responsibility and one of the biggest things that you drive home, and it was a line that I'm not going to remember it now, but it was like, how do you care for something that's like outside of you? Or like, how do you not live in fear when you have to
Hmm.
care or something along those lines?
Yeah.
And that's so true. And that's something that I found like even with having a freaking dog or like even having things that I care about like a career or a hobby that I've invested a lot of time in, whenever you care really deeply for something, the stakes of losing that increase.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we see really with Jess and the boy, because like you said, she just kind of stumbles upon him and then they take off.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting dynamic that you explore as well, you know?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I did kind of want to use the relationship between Jess and the boy as kind of a proxy stand-in for my relationship with kids too, because I also don't have kids, but have had pets, which seems like such a trivial thing to say,
No.
but when you've had a pet, you know what it means.
Yeah.
That relationship is not as trivial as some might think. Um, and um, and also my wife and I really wanted kids, and we're very much trying to go down that route, and things were not destined to be that way. But for several years, like I was doing a lot of like emotional preparation for what it would be like to have kids and stuff like that. So it's something I've thought about a lot, and I've thought about in relationship with my nieces and with friends' kids and stuff like that too. Um, that it is just I think there's an additional challenge uh, to the whole dynamic that, and I wanted to make sure that it got some ink time in the book,
Yeah.
like you have very kindly said. I didn't want it just to be like all dads are bad. Dads are
Yeah.
dads are dads can't get it because dads just don't understand. Um, but that a lot of the time, not all the time, who knows? It's individual basis, but so much of what we look at as bad parenting or toxic parenting or anything like that is rooted in wanting what's best for the kid. Like there's
Yeah,
a lot of it that really
that's
does
so
come
true.
from a place of, you know, I'm being cruel now because it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah.
If I withhold love from you now, you'll work harder. Or if I yell at you now, you won't do this thing, and that will be good. Like it's nobody know. I think it's a thing that you get the older you become is just that. Again, it sounds so easy, but like the
Oh yeah.
profundity of it is massive that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing,
Oh yeah. Yeah, no.
especially your parents. Like nobody knows. They're a fucking, 18-year-old who just happened to grow, 30 more years.
Yeah.
Like, but they don't know none of us know anything. And when you're trying to keep this little thing alive that has an instinct to like chew on an electrical cord, uh, like, what do you do with that? And so, like, I think there is an element of the archetypal father figure uh, that is kind of exhausted by that uh, um, impotency,
Yeah.
and again, like that's another like culturally masculine
Right.
concept that's
Yeah.
really hard for people to deal with. But I think a lot of times fathers can feel very impotent, not in a sexual way, but
No, but like helpless.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the sexual dynamics probably tie in. Like again, we've already mentioned Freud.
I was gonna say Freud
Uh,
would be having a field day right now.
exactly. But like, removing the prurience of it, it still like is your identity as a man
Yeah.
is to be someone who is a problem solver and a taker care of,
Yeah, a
taker
man of
upper
action
upper.
or a
Yeah,
man of
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And when kids require empathy and patience and investment and time, and those are not things that, you know, quick fix and problem solving
Right.
is gonna do well with at all. So, again, like just archetypally, how fathers can be incredibly well meaning, but like the tools that a lot of
Yeah.
men are given uh don't automatically fit the assignment, I think, too. So that probably further complicates it. There are a lot of very uncomfortable dads who are probably like, I
Yeah.
wish I could talk to my kid too, and I just
Yeah.
can't. I don't understand what they want. I don't understand, the language they're speaking, and
Right.
I just want them to be safe and
Yeah.
happy and healthy, and don't know how to contribute to that, and they kind of disconnect. Um, I'll briefly mention one other thing about the afterword of this book, which I don't want to spoil too much, but I'll share this little detail that the afterword is all about my dad
Yeah.
and my relationship to my dad. And my dad was a one of the weirdest people I've ever met in my life. And I go into great detail in the afterword as to why that is. But just a detail of that is that uh, he was someone who was in medicine for his entire life. It built a very big and in some ways very prominent career in medicine. Uh, and then at 60, retired from medicine and became a cop out of nowhere, just a beat cop. Um, fat diabetic 60-year-old man. It's like, I'm gonna now go through basic training in the desert
Jesus.
and become a cop. And then he did that for a few years, and then became, kind of transitioned into becoming a detective in child crimes, in child sex crimes, predominantly. Uh, and so then, as anyone can imagine, like the turnover rate in that department is like 5 minutes. It's so
Oh,
depressing and
oh
brutal.
yeah.
But he lasted for a few years. Um, and the reason why I bring all this up in the context of this rambling answer that I'm giving yet again is just that my dad was was terrible with kids. He was so bad with kids. I remember one of the last times I saw him. Uh, so this was, just a couple of years ago. He had been a child crimes detective for a while by that point, and my young nieces were over. I think they were like, let's say like 6 and 9 at the time or something like that. So just hyper kids running around having fun at their grandpa's house. And you could see him just kind of like retreat into himself. Like he hated the noise, he hated the mess, he
Yeah.
hated not being able to like rationalize with them or talk to them. And so I had to ask him during, one of our last conversations of like, you hate kids. Why are you in this like you could have been a detective in anything, but
Yeah,
you went into
exactly. Yeah.
child crimes. And he, was very candid that like he knows that as a father, that discomfort was always there, and he's always felt, or had always felt this burden, this guilt because of the things that we're talking about. Because like he knew he wanted to be a good dad, but he just couldn't deal with kids, and he wanted to like balance the scales karmically in one way or another. So I found that to be incredibly poignant and something that like adolescent me who had like a dad chip on the shoulder
Yeah.
um, might not have been even prepared to think of at the
Yeah.
time, or prepared to like accept that like, you know, what must it have been like for him as a father to hear his baby son scream in terror every time he comes into the room.
Yeah.
Like all I knew was my version of it, of like I
Right.
was really scared of my dad. But like
Yeah.
that, there's two people in that equation, and
Yeah.
that comes with its own kind of psychic cost.
Yeah.
I don't know how coherent that was, but
Oh no, I mean,
he's
I think, for me, whenever you recognize this stuff about your parents, and like you said, like you saw your dad be quote unquote being good with other kids, like in the sense of his career, right?
mm,
And then you just kind of like reflect like, well, why couldn't he have been good with me? But his answer gives so much sense to that feeling of like, well, why not me? Like, and
mm,
I think that that amount of empathy to put yourself in his shoes and to explore every facet of it is really fascinating and commendable in my opinion as well.
yeah.
But then the other thing too about when the wolf comes home is there is a theme both with the child who he's called Kiddo throughout the book. So if I'm not naming him, it's not because I don't remember he's called Kiddo for the most part. And Jess, and it's I want to talk to you about like persistent pursuit and horror and all those cool technical things within the genre, but um the theme of like wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah,
And it's something that like Liz Karen with her duology, Night's Edge and First Light, I feel like she kind of tapped into those similar things, and then you do it again with this book. And
yeah,
it's kind of like wrestling with you've got to deal with the internal to deal with the external sometimes. And I think a lot of times with parenthood, like you said, you have the best intentions, like especially if you had a bad parent experience
mm,
with your own parents, you're like, I
right.
refuse to have that kind of experience for my child. And then sometimes,
You
despite,
overcorrect.
yes, and then you end up sometimes in the same place. And so
Yeah,
wherever you go, there you are. And there's never, I don't think there's a book, I mean, your book, it just reads so clearly that way to me. It just came across so clearly that way. But and that's why it like hit so close emotionally because it's just, it makes all of the sense. And whether you're a parent or not, I mean, everybody's been a child, you had to have come from
right,
somewhere.
right,
So, is it a book about fathers and parenthood and all that good stuff? Like, yeah, but it's also about like being a person who has fears and anxieties and where to place them whenever, like you just don't know how to or where to or, all those different things. So,
right.
um, but to move
Yeah, that's
away, wait, I'll let you finish your point though.
I was just gonna say like that. That is like I- ultimately the fundamental dynamic at play of this
Yeah,
book. I think it starts as it starts in the place of like this is a book about dads,
yeah,
but then it's a book about shapeshifters,
yeah,
and that theme shifts then to its actual true state, which actually is no, this is a book about fear and anxiety and the difference between childhood fear and adult anxiety, which are
yeah,
always the same thing, just a different name for both
yeah,
of them. And childhood fear is very external, and adult anxiety is very internal. And that's the arc, I think, of everyone's kind of fear response. We're when we're
yeah.
little and vulnerable, we're afraid of the thing that could eat us, and then we
Right.
reach a certain age, and it's like, oh, the thing that is eating me is actually myself
Myself, yeah.
and and
It's
the
me.
shit that my
Yeah.
parents did and the shit that I did and like um, you still have to find a way to dispel those monsters,
Yeah.
even though they're no longer external.
Yeah. And it kind of brings me to my next point. I do want to talk about some of the technical aspects of horror that you employ in this book because I think that they're really, really creative. I mean, everything about this book is creative because, like I mentioned, there are certain aspects of this book that aren't necessarily advertised, and then you're going to read it and you're going to be like, holy shit, he did that. That's great. And that's there if you want it. But, in a way, the book feels a little meta because it's a
Mm,
horror book about horror, and so
yeah.
like in and of itself, that's a little self-referential. Um, Whenever you set out to write this, or like what was the nugget of idea with this? Like, did this come out fully formed that you knew that the story was going to take the road that it did? Did it start someplace and end somewhere else? Like, did you
Mm.
know that you wanted to write a horror book about horror and fear? Like how did that happen, I guess?
The answer to all of them is yes. Uh, it's it did come very clear. Like kind of was just one of those like mental downloads.
Yeah.
And then it did become something else in the writing of it. The structure was always there.
Hmm.
The basic shape of the whole thing was always there. Um, for fans of Mary out there too, they might get a kick out of knowing that this is another book that I first attempted to write when I was like 13.
Yeah.
Actually, like right after Mary, I started to write the book that would become this book. I never finished it, unlike the baby version of Mary. This was just like, I kept writing like the opening scenes over and over and over again, and then could never quite crack it.
Yeah.
Um, and like one of the fundamental twists of this book was not in there. Um, so that's part of why I had never been able to like actually find the story for it back then. Um, but so it had always just been like a premise, boy on the run is found by, kind of struggling slacker, winds up being pursued by uh evil dad. Um, that had always been there. That had been with me for a long time. And when I sat down to write this version, I've found that for me, like when an idea presents itself to me as ready,
Hmm.
it usually needs to meet like three criteria, and that
Yeah.
criteria is always different. It's not the same for each story, but it's just like it has to work for me on three levels.
Yeah.
um and in this way, or in this case, it worked because I did want to write a chase novel. I wanted to write something that, pace wise, was very different to Mary and to Nestlings. And I wanted to write something about dads because, um, Mary is, kind of that's dedicated to my mom,
Yeah.
and Nestlings is dedicated to my wife. And these were all kind of written in the same time when, my mom died, my dad died, our pets died, and my wife was, uh, going through some horrible chronic pain.
Yeah.
So like these three books were also kind of an unofficial trilogy, and I was like, I want to write something for that last person that I haven't like eulogized in book form yet. Um, so that was two, and then the third was that I wanted to write about fear, and I wanted to write about the what I've kind of already uh, articulated. I wanted to write about the difference between childhood fear and
Yeah.
adult fear, and how, there are some things in common, and then there are some things that are wildly different.
Yeah.
And I've had in my own life, spates where I had to deal with like very unexpected, very intense, very uncharacteristic, kind of neurotic behavior, which in my case was like, intrusive thoughts and thought
Yeah.
spirals that, like in my early 20s, just like came out of fucking nowhere
Yeah.
and just like derailed my life for like a year, to the point where like I couldn't keep food down. I was just like so anxious all the time. And just like these recurrent, constant thoughts that
Yeah.
I could
The
not escape.
ruminating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the worst,
About
man.
like the most morbid shit. And I was someone who's like been in love with morbid since I
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
kid. So it was like weird that it was having this sort of, reaction, within me. And it wasn't until much later, appropriately enough, that I learned that my dad went through the same thing,
Yeah.
and at the same age, and nobody fucking warned me that that was a possibility.
Yeah, there's
Um,
no warning label on that one,
yeah,
unfortunately.
right. Thanks for the genetic heads up. Uh, but so those three things, those three levels were kind of percolating at the same time, where I was like, I really want to write something that addresses these three things. And I had, um, broken the idea as a screenplay
Hmm.
first. So the first time I beat the story out was as a treatment.
Yeah.
Uh, and my film and TV reps loved it. They continue to love it. They're very mad that I haven't written the screenplay yet, because they really want the screenplay ready to go when the
Yeah.
book is published. And it does like lend itself very well to film, I think, because
I,
it
I
is.
think it certain aspects, holy,
Yeah,
I'd give a
right.
kidney right now to see this on a screen. Like I
It,
just would love to see it visually.
it might take that, with this industry. So hold that thought.
Got
Um,
it.
but so like, and I had all the like those visual elements in
Yeah.
place, when I decided I wanted this to actually be a book first. And so I wrote the first draft, and the first draft I was so proud because I was like, oh my God, this is an 80,000 word book. Everyone gives me shit for writing books that are longer than like 90,000 words, so here you go. here's my here's my, you can put this on the rack at a Walgreens. Like, this is great. And my editor read it and she was like, it's missing something. Like there's just something about it that's not you. And she was right. And it took like another like 15,000 words. I went way over 90,000 words yet again. It's shorter than both other books though, everybody. Don't worry. It's a fast book. But all that stuff that was added in was stuff about Jess and it was her
Yeah,
inner life and things like that. So the book
that's interesting.
began to change. And another big element that really affected it actually was that my wife's dad, while I was in the middle of like the first rewrite, uh, her dad, from whom she is totally estranged, he died,
Yeah,
and it was a very complicated, continues to be a
yeah,
very complicated grieving process. You know, when someone who you never want to see again dies, and you're never going to see them again, like it's just like a weird kind of wish fulfillment, but not the way you expected. A lot of resentment starts bubbling up, a lot of grief, a lot of pain. And I was watching her navigate all of this, and I was like, that's what was missing from this book.
yeah.
In the first draft, Jess's Jess's dad has always been dead, but she doesn't find out about it until
Mm.
a certain point that you probably can predict having read it.
Yeah,
You know, it's like she's 7/10 of the way through the book that she finds out
yeah,
that
yeah,
he's
yeah,
been dead for a while. And I was like, no, that needs to be where the book starts. So
yeah,
she knows that he's been dead for a while. And it just like solved so many things that I didn't even know needed solving in the subsequent drafts of I don't think she would have felt so compelled to take care of this kid if she
yeah.
didn't have that as
That's
like
a good
this
point.
active thing going on. If it was just like this background passive dad resentment,
Right.
it wouldn't have been so present. And so that like really that was when like everything finally clicked, and I was like, that's what it needed. And that then it became the book that you read.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I have to ask this question, and I'm obviously not gonna say what the ending is, but you've got a hell of an ending with this one. Did you always know that you were gonna end it this way?
I did.
You did.
I did. It's bits of it have changed.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'd always imagined it. Um, Trying to figure out how to talk about it without talking about it.
I know,
But
it's hard.
to me, I would say this ending is like 80% definite, and there's like maybe like room for like 20% of like, oh, you could read something else into it. Like you could,
Hmm.
there's room for interpretation.
Yeah.
And when I'd originally uh, uh, written the first ending and kind of planned it out, I think it was more like 50-50. But I
Yeah.
really wanted to push it to as far to like, no, here's actually what is happening. Objective sort of definitional approach to it. That kind of morphed as the drafts went on. And I have to, if we're going to talk about the ending, I have to shout out Rachel Harrison, who has read like five different versions of the ending because each one I would like move like four sentences around and be like, does it
Is this
still
the
work?
one? Yeah.
Did I fuck it up? And in fact, the final book that is going to be published, I tweaked it like one more time. I moved like a few sentences around just like one last time. So there's
Yeah.
part of me that's like, oh God, did I? I hope I didn't fuck it up. I hope I didn't, because it works. It works. I love this
Yeah.
ending, but
It's funny, really funny that you say that you left it it was like kind of 50-50, like gonna be up to you, and then you went like 80-20,
yeah,
because me and I have a friend Charlie, he just reviewed it this week. And I was talking to him about it, and we both had different interpretations of the ending. And
yeah.
so you still get that. There's a point of it that's definite, but I you succeeded in leaving something on the table for that. If that was a
Good,
goal.
good. Yes, yes. I wanted like a little bit,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
keep you anxious. You know, that's what the book's about.
Yeah, I mean, you can't solve all of our problems in one book, Nat. I mean, oh man. And then,
Well, and
the
like it's one of the things I find fascinating about this ending too, um, is that I think it really depends on your mood when you read it too, because
yeah.
uh, it could be something of like a damnation or a transcendence. Like it is, I
That
think.
was exactly what we spoke about. That was exactly
Mm,
it. That was
yeah.
exactly it. So it's really funny that you say that. But to zoom out a little bit more, I mentioned the I don't know if it's a trope or like it's not a subgenre, but the method of utilizing persistent pursuit. Like we've
Mm,
seen it like in It Follows, obviously like for a movie reference, but then we just saw it in Josh Mallerman's Incidents Around the House with Other Mommy, who
yeah.
did not relent for anything. Um, it's such
Wouldn't
a
even let
you
you go to the bathroom.
no, God, dude, I don't even listen. I'm so traumatized. I need to send Josh my therapy bills. But it's such an interesting device to use something like that that's just so relentless.
Mm,
And like you've kind of got that in a couple different ways with this novel because there's some outside influences that you may not necessarily expect. But with the dad in particular, specifically, you just know that he's coming. It's
hmm
inevitable. It's all inevitable. And like, what's it like to write that? Like, I know what it feels like to read it, but
mm.
what's it like to write it?
I love it. I would love to revisit it, uh, that kind of that structure again.
Yeah.
Won't for a little while because I don't like to repeat myself. Uh, but it's so satisfying,
Hmm.
and it's so clean. Like it almost feels like a cheat. Like I say that as someone who is like currently just embroiled in the first draft of my next book, and
Oh,
it's like
God bless
so
you.
shapeless, and like there's things of like, does this happen here? Does that like what's the structure going to be? And you just gotta like puke it all out before you can impose something on it. But like a chase story is just like, I know what's going to happen. I know, here's where the confrontations will be. Here's where a getaway will be. Here's where a close call will be. Maybe here's where a subversion of expectations will be. It's just like it's so, when you get the mechanics right, it's just so satisfying.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of that comes from Terminator 2, which was like one
Yeah.
of the first. When did Terminator 2 come out? I think it came out in 91. So I was like 9 or 10 when that
Hmm.
movie came out. And it was like the first contemporary movie that I was obsessed with. Like I got the magazines for it and the trading cards and all the toys. And I just like, I made my mom drive like across Arizona to find a VHS of the first Terminator because I had to have
Yeah.
that too. This is back when like VHSs cost like $30.
Yeah.
Uh, like it was a big deal. And so I was obsessed. I had the script. I would read the script. There's just something about Terminator 2 that like did it for me.
Yeah.
And to this day, there's something about the structure that I find so elegant and so like my wife had never seen it. We watched it a few years ago, um, and like that movie hasn't aged a day. It is still so well done in that way that like a good James Cameron movie can be. Like it is just like
Yeah.
the pieces are all there and it's seamless the way it's constructed. And one of the things I love about that movie and how different it is, how unique it is that the first one, Terminator 1, is also a chase movie, and that's very clean. That's very easy.
Hmm.
Terminator's coming, Kyle Reese is coming. He finds Sarah, they're on the run. Great. Bing bing bing. But what Terminator 2 does that I is so great, besides, just the subversion of expectations that now the Terminator is the good guy. Spoilers for Terminator 2, by the way. You all should have seen it by now. Um, but the thing that I love about it is that the actual pursuer, the actual T-1000, um, is off stage for most of the movie.
Yeah.
Like they go on an Act 2 side quest that takes up like an hour, and every now and then you'll just see, and for that every now and then is a long time,
Yeah.
where you'll just like touch briefly back with like, oh, he's still out there. So
Yeah.
like the thing you think, the stakes that are so high in this side quest that you are now on, you can't ever forget that he is out there and he is indefatigable and indefeatable. And there's just something about that like is so delicious and scary. And like I always um like to rhapsodize about how horror stories are, you know, an effective tool for coming to terms with our own mortality, and how
Yeah.
great a visualization of that metaphor is. That like, no, you might think that you've solved that problem, now you're going on to like, fight uh, uh find Miles Dyson and like stop Cyberdyne systems from coming online and all that. Like you might think that that's now your quest, but that's still out there, and that's still
Yeah.
going to come for you, and it's probably going to show up at the worst time when you're least prepared for it. So I really wanted to echo that structure in this story, where like, they get away eventually, and then have like shit that they have to deal with that's way more pressing, but he's still out there, and he's still tearing his way through your life, and he's gonna find you.
It's just so effective, and it's, and done, like you said, done correctly. It's rather effortless because it's so
Mm.
subtle and it doesn't need the flair of, I mean, and the that kind of horror is there if you want it out in the world, but all the blood, the gore. I mean, you start off this book with plenty of blood and gore, but tonally, the atmosphere that is maintained, like you said, you
Mm.
just need a hint of him existing in this
Yeah.
world for that threat and that danger to exist. And so I think it's a really unique thing, like you said, whenever it's pulled off and like the timing is right and the mechanics are nailed, to be able to do it. Because you can maybe forget about it for a little while, but it's never really quite out of your periphery, and you just
Yeah.
need a little glint of it to remember. Um, yeah, I'm really into it. Like I really like it, and like I want to kind of find some more horror that does that. I feel like there was another movie that I had thought of that was kind of close to these, like something similar to It Follows, but I can't remember what it
Mm.
is now. It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's really smart storytelling, and it's, you're not having to overwrite or like overflex your muscles of like, let me show you how scary, like, no, feel how scary it is instead of, like live with it.
I mean, there's something so primal about it, like that, just that
Yeah.
feeling of being hunted. Like that is so deep within our DNA of this thing to be aware of. Like, is there a predator out there for me right now?
Yeah. And I mean, and that, like you said, the sense of mortality, I've heard you say it multiple times, and it's something that I've subscribed to is like, we're the only beings walking around knowing that we're gonna die and are
Hmm.
constantly contending with that. And I mean, it's the thing that never really leaves the room. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally get that. But I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because I want to give you space to talk about something else, but I don't want I just want to reiterate again. I mean, this is going to be a very complimentary episode, obviously, but
I'll
I
take it.
just freaking love this book, and I know it's early to call it, but it's going to be hard to top this one for me for horror of the year just
Thank
because
you.
it does so much. And there are certain aspects of this book that I'll talk to you about off recording that just like I swear to God you wrote this book for me, but no. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I listen, your afterwards are always phenomenal. This one in
Thank you.
particular, but I've always liked them since I started reading Mary and, all that way back when. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like a triumph. Like it just feels like shit, this is the one. Like this is not that you didn't have one before, but like it God, this book is so good.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope others hear
Oh no,
it.
I think a lot of people tend to agree, at least from the people I've talked to about it. But to move on to other major horror books, something else that you have in the works for this year is the Stand.
Mm,
You're contributing to the Stand anthology, The End of the World as We
yeah.
Know It. And I wanted to give you some, I don't know, how much you can say or not say about all of that, but I wanted to give you the chance to kind of plug it and talk about it if you wanted to.
Sure. Oh, and I want to talk to you because you just finished reading The Stand for the
I
first time.
did. I
So I want to hear
did.
all about how you feel about this universe. But yeah, it is. I don't have too much to say, primarily because I haven't read the other stories yet. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all I know is what I wrote, and it's just like such a tremendous honor to be
Yeah.
a part of this like when Chris Golden and Brian Keene, who are brilliant writers in their own right, um, are editing this anthology. and like purposefully didn't contribute to it. So like they're just like shepherding this massive undertaking. And when they sent me the final table of contents, just to like see who else was in it, like it hit me on a level that I wasn't quite prepared for, just because it like felt like every now and then like an anthology will come out and it just kind of feels like a sort of archaeological event. And
Yeah.
like this kind of feels like that. Like it's because it's about the stand. It's about this book that is foundational for so many of us as horror
Yeah.
fans. And even if you're not a stand fan, uh, uh, it's a key work for an author who's very important to all of us. And then the table of contents is full of writers who had prominence in horror in the 90s and in the 2000s and in the 2010s and now in the 2020s. Like it just feels like it is this beautiful conversation with
Yeah.
horror, in a way that only a book this big with this
Yeah.
many contributors, and also about this, about a thing, about a book. Like it's so rare to have an anthology for set in like another author's
Right.
universe. So like it's a very rarefied thing to be able to have this dynamic that I think is really, I'm sure individual stories will work better or worse for each individual reader, but just as like a whole, it just feels like such a great thing to be a part of, and I'm so so grateful for it. And I'm like doubly grateful because my story is the second to last. Like it's kind of like setting up the ball to be spiked at the very end.
Yeah.
And it is a story that I will just say, for anyone who wants it slightly, barely, freezingly spoiled, there are answers in the section name
Okay.
of the anthology as to what it might be about. Let's just
Okay.
say what it might touch on. Um, but so if you want to read the name of the part in which it is in the anthology, it'll clue you in a little bit. But it is a story that is trying to find a way to say this that doesn't sound immodest um, or just stupid, but for concision's sake, fuck it. I'm just gonna say it this way. It's the sort of story that only a massive Stephen King nerd could write. And
I
so
expect nothing less. I
it
expect
is.
absolutely nothing
I
less.
think it still works. I've had other people who are not familiar with King at all read it, and
Yeah.
like they're like it still works on its own. So you don't have to be a King nerd, but if you are a King nerd, it is full of so many Easter eggs and details, to the point that when I first turned it in, I think it was Chris who was like, uh, "We got to check with Steve to make sure like you can do all this, because like we only got permission to reference like Mother Abigail and Randall Flagg, and we got we got to get clearance for this because it is because and here's where I want to hear how you feel about the stand and everything like that. But the stand is a standalone book,
Yeah.
but it also connects to the Dark Tower, and
Yep.
because it connects to the Dark Tower, it connects to several other works, and there are also short stories that King wrote that kind of touch on the stand uh, marginally, or were like dry runs of the stand, that he wrote in like college or something like that. So it's a kind of keystone book. There's a lot of tentacles that book has
Yeah.
into other stories and worlds and stuff like that. So it was just like such a perfect opportunity that I just giddily ran with, of like, all right, if we're setting it in the Stand universe, then I'm gonna take that
Well,
seriously,
yeah.
and it's gonna be set in the Stand universe. So we're gonna bring
Yeah.
in all the things that the Stand kind of touches on.
I love that though. I mean, I think if you're a fan, I mean, and even if you're not a fan, but if you have read any of King, I mean, like it's just such a treat to get that, you know, like it's just such a like a little delight to get something like that. And I have to say, sitting on this side of the table, being a reader, I
Hmm.
can't tell you like how happy I am for y'all being happy, like how excited I am for y'all being excited. Because I know you can even, you know, before I read The Stand, culturally, King's presence in pop culture has always been, you know, a thing, obviously,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's the basis of like apocalyptic fiction. Like it's just like such a pedestal of horror and fiction in general that to know that this was happening was just, I mean, it's the reason that I picked it up whenever I did. So that way I was ready to read this anthology whenever it came out because I
Hmm.
absolutely want to. It's just been like the coolest thing to see you all be part of it. Like that's an added like layer of it that I don't know that y'all realize, but that is a thing. Um but yeah, I mean The Stand, I mean, I don't know that I have anything to contribute about the book that somebody has not already said. But I will say for me, you know, I thought that I knew what it was going to be about, and in some
Hmm.
ways I was right, but in very many ways I was wrong. You know, the whole the way that Captain Trips just kind of like decimates the world. I can't tell
Hmm.
you the deep-seated gut horror that like it's a casual chapter that he writes, but he just starts talking about the spread from person to person to person and who
Yeah.
they contacted. It's some of the most effective horror that I've ever read, and it's again, it's subtle. It's
Yeah.
happening off camera, and you know it's there, and it's going to keep coming, but it doesn't have to be strong-armed into your vision to know that it's there. Um, the commentary that King has packed into that book, I it's like borderline, I hate to say like prolific. I mean like but it's just like what we're dealing with now. It's just like, God, how did he know? You know, and like
Hmm.
in particular, it's the character of Harold that like really just
Ooh,
sticks with
Harold.
me and how true to like the incel culture that we are seeing
Yeah.
that he wrote in 78 where I mean I don't know the history of the word incel, but I know it's more popular nomenclature now.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I mean it blows me away. And you know, King is always known for his character work, and I think I walked in expecting because it was such a long book, and I think I was expecting it to be like a little bit more political than it was,
Hmm.
and a little bit more maximalist and zoned out, but I don't know why I really thought that because he's always been about character. It's always about the people you spend the time with, and that's how you come to think about these bigger ideas. So I don't know
Yeah.
why I really thought it would have been any different with this, but for whatever reason I did. I thought it was going to be big like right versus left, good versus evil. And I mean it is, but it's just the way that he delivers it was not what I was expecting, but for the best way possible. And it kept me reading and motivated because I cared about the people way more than if it would have been just, you know, like posturing about Denver versus Vegas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was a hell of a reading experience. I will not lie to you. I mean, Trash Can Man rolling up on the little cart at the end. I laughed my I probably shouldn't have, but I was like sitting in the recliner, like laughing my head off
Hmm.
because I don't know if you saw, but on Twitter and like Blue Sky and everywhere else, I was like posting updates. And my first update that I posted was like right after we met Trash Can Man and he set like his first fire. I posted the Elmo meme of like the atom bomb in the back. And then I got to the end and I was like, oh shit, I was right. Like I didn't know. Like
That's
um
really funny.
yeah, it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I mean, and I think I'm gonna try and I've, you know, done this essay series where I kind of like reflect on the bigger works of Stephen King as I read them because, you know, I'm reading them now for the first time.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to unpack them as an adult rather than, you know, a kid who's like experiencing horror like this for the first time. So I'm probably gonna write something about it at some point. I don't really know yet, but
Okay.
first brush with it is just like I'm just blown away by how I mean there are parts of it, don't get me wrong, that not have aged super great. There's certain aspects I'm like, we really need to do that? Um, but
It
there's
wouldn't be a
just
Stephen King read without
right,
those moments.
exactly. Um, but there's just too much that he got right so long ago that I don't. It's
Yeah.
beyond me, you know?
And that's why, like, I mean, you said you don't have anything new to say about the stand that hasn't been said anymore, but like, you said you're what, 26, you said?
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, there has not been stuff written about the stand by someone who is 26 years old in 2025 and
Yeah,
who
that's
like,
true.
your formative young adulthood was shaped by COVID and stuff like
Yeah.
you have a perspective on this book that no one who
Yeah.
has written about this book, other than people from your cohort, from your generation, can bring to it. So like it's such a valuable perspective to see like how does this book hold up
Yeah.
after what we have gone through. I, personally think it holds up really well as well, but
Oh
that's
yeah.
just I'm someone who's kind of this was my mom's favorite book, so like we were a
Yeah.
stand house. I was a rebel because it was my favorite Stephen King book. Like that was like an apostate. But yeah, so we were a stand household, and
Yeah.
there is so much wisdom in that book. I'm glad it resonated for you. Did
Yeah.
you did you like track the like Lord of the Rings sort of
A little like
structure of it?
a little bit, and I'm not really a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like I know it like in pop culture, like I'm
Yeah.
not like a huge nerd about it. But what I will say, more than anything that I don't want to say I was dreading, but I was like, God, I don't know if I can stomach it. Like I have a really hard time with some religious themes and like,
Mm.
I was like, God, I know it's good versus evil and like I know about the ending in the hand of God and all that. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to shape out for me, especially like with Mom Abby. I was like, so I got to her section and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then
Yeah.
it ended up being like, it really wasn't, and he actually has like a passage that I highlighted about, like religious egotism and like all like that
Yeah,
stuff
the
and I was like,
pride.
oh yeah, okay, all right, we're I didn't think that King would be you know super preachy about it and
Yeah.
holier than thou, but I do know if there is a Christian work to be said of his, this is it. So in my mind I was like, we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
um
There's one other one, which is a much later book from the 90s called Desperation. That's
oh yeah,
also very, very much about God and like kind of
yeah,
specifically the Christian God. Um, and similarly is very nuanced and is very not dogmatic and complicated. There's another aspect of the Denver and Las Vegas thing that you have kind of touched on that I like has always been one of my favorite elements of it, especially like the older I get and the more of this country that
yeah,
we are forced to witness. Um, but like it's a detail that I only bring up because the most recent adaptation of it, the TV show,
oh yeah, I was told not to watch that.
it's it's bad bad. Like it
Yeah,
is it is
okay,
really really. It starts really strong. I thought the first episode was actually fantastic,
yeah,
and like takes some big swings that I really appreciated. And there's it's a really good cast.
yeah, I looked at the
But
cast and I was like stunned.
yeah,
I was like,
oh, it's amazing.
yeah.
And then some choices that I was like, but I was giving them a try. Um, but and Owen Teague as Harold is
Yeah.
phenomenal. But like the thing that they did with regards to Vegas versus Colorado so fundamentally misunderstood the book
Mm.
and
Yeah.
became the thing that you were worried the book was going
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
in that they made Las Vegas this nonstop orgy of like drugs and sex, and everyone's just like humping everyone else and wearing
Yeah,
like
they made it
BDSM
legit
gear.
Sin City. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
they
Yeah.
totally like to a cartoonish extent. And the thing I
Yeah.
love about that book, and like I think exemplifies a lot of the wisdom of the book, is that no, Las Vegas is clean and
Yeah.
orderly and safe. It's the place where you want to be. And Colorado is messy and democratic, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, and
And
a
like
bomb just went off
that's
somewhere.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's I think that depiction of fascism versus democracy is one that is like really relevant to this day. Like no one's going to be tempted by like the orgy, the sex fest in Las Vegas. Like they're tempted because that's where all the cops are. That's where all
Yeah.
the firefighters are.
Well,
And
all the tech people who were getting, everything up and running and, but also to that same token though, I really did appreciate that. I forget, maybe it was like one of the quote unquote spies, like whenever they got there, they recognized like these people don't look all that different than us.
yeah,
And I don't know why they're here.
yeah,
Like to me, that says so much more than any divide you can cast between the two cities or good or evil, whatever, like that. To me
yeah,
that spoke volumes, and like then that like assuaged my like fears of that very thing that you're saying that the TV series did.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's so
yeah.
funny that like the cover that I grew up with and like the one of the more iconic covers is like a guy in like fucking like a fantasy prince outfit fighting like an evil bird
Literally.
monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
That one.
that's how you
I
depict
know.
this nuanced depiction of society building.
Yeah,
Uh
one's got like a beak with some weird hair and some
yeah,
weird teeth, and then the other one looks like I don't even know what he looks like, but
it's like
yeah.
fucking Prince Valiant.
Yeah.
Uh yeah.
Well, at any rate, I'm very, very excited for the anthology and to see it's it's really going to be really cool, I think, to see where everybody takes it, and everybody's interpretation and all like the little nuggets that you can pull from this world because I mean, there's just it's such a big playground to play in.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that y'all have the opportunity to. I think that that's just one of the coolest things that you can do with horror. And like, and it isn't like a huge nod to King, yeah, but I mean, it's just a huge nod to it's a huge level out of the genre and like
Yeah.
what the genre can do, you know?
Yeah, and how it's changed
Yeah.
over 5 decades. Like it's going to be so great. Like
Yeah.
I can't wait to read these other. There's one that I think that is like set in space.
Oh wow,
There
yeah.
are several that are in different countries, so it's not just America.
Yeah.
It's just going to be so cool.
I know, I agree. I'm really, really excited for it. But all right, Nat. Well, I feel like I've taken up enough of your time, but I want to do like my standard. Are there any other projects that I have not mentioned between When the Wolf Comes Home and the Stand
Mm.
Anthology that you want to talk about, that you want to plug? I know that you said that you're working on a rough draft of your next book,
Mm.
but
Yeah, that's the all-consuming thing right now.
yeah.
I have like 2.5 weeks to finish this draft, and it is we have like medical things in our household going on right now and other like exogenous things that are being very time consuming and energy
Yeah.
consuming. So this book, which is already so difficult to write, is just like not cooperating at all. So that's all I can think of at the moment. That is what is all consuming, but ideally I'll finish it in time, and it will be out sometime in 2026. Um, yeah, beyond I mean, I just shot an episode of Law and Order. That'll be airing at some
I've
point.
been seeing that on social media. That's always a fun little
It was
tidbit to
nice to be
share.
back.
Yeah.
I've been doing this long enough that they can bring me back as a different character.
I
That's
was about to
how.
say, can you say if you're a bad guy or a good guy?
Well, what do you
Yeah, I'm gonna watch and find out. All right.
think? Do I ever play good guys? Come on. Um, I'm a misunderstood guy. That's what I am.
Yeah.
Let's say. Uh, yeah, and beyond that, like I'm going on tour for When the
Yeah.
Wolf Comes Home, so I will be sharing those tour dates whenever they're all nailed down with wonderful conversation partners and people who I need to approach and make sure that they'd be up for talking to me about this book. Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. So that'll be in like from March to June.
That's very exciting.
And that's I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think
Casually, just two major works coming out in a year, book
just
tour.
a
Yeah.
little quiet year. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. All right, Nat. Well, thank you so much again. I just want to impart again. I really love When the Wolf Comes Home again,
thank
and
you.
it's an emotionally complex book. Accomplishes a lot of the horror genre that we love to see, and it's just oh man, I just freaking love it. I mean, I sound like a fangirl when I'm saying this, but I just am over the moon about it, and I'm so incredibly excited for the Stand anthology. And whenever you get your tour dates, I'll share those whenever and wherever. But until
Yay.
then, I appreciate your time so much.
I appreciate yours. Thank you. Thank you.
As always, I have to give my biggest thanks to Nat once again for spending a whole hour and 10 minutes and some change talking about his book, talking about the stand, talking about his writing, everything that we talked about. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. It looking back now, in April, whenever I'm prepping this episode to push out, on this conversation in January, and knowing the kind of like pre-success that Nat has had with this book before it's even on shelves, it makes me even more excited for him. The fact that we got a King blurb, the fact that just all of the reviews that we've seen about this book, the acclaim that it's gotten, the love that it's gotten, it's just it feels like a really big moment and in the modern horror scene, and it feels really, really special that I got the chance to talk to Nat about it and just how kind he is every time that we get the chance to chat. If you are looking for more conversations with Nat and other very intelligent people within the horror community, check out Talking Scared, check out Books in the Freezer. I know that there's going to be tons of interviews with Nat coming out in the next few days, so keep your eyes peeled for those. I'll most likely be resharing those on social media. I just want to promote the hell out of this book because I think it's a horror book that everybody who is a fan of horror needs to read. And even if you're not, I think this might pull some thriller fans across the Barnes and Noble aisle. Um, it's just really incredible. And I know I keep saying it, and I don't mean to be redundant, but it's true. Um, Next week, I believe I will be sharing a conversation with Miss Anna Meyer. She is the author of the graphic novel Saint Catherine, which I'm not sure that a whole lot of people know about, but I loved it. I adored it. I think it's a beautiful graphic novel, and I think it's a beautiful story. So stay tuned for that. And then I'll probably be taking a little break for the month of May, but then I'll be back in full swing for the month of June. As always, thank you guys so much for listening, for resharing, for everything that you all do to support this little gig. And until